Hi guys, I know you hate paying a lot of tax to the government, even though that is your civic responsibility. But also in the tax laws in whichever country, there are avenues through which you can be able to reduce the taxes that you are paying the government. That's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. How do you reduce the taxes that you are paying to the government? You are all much welcomed to the Money Daily TV. My name is Afagza Sifuna. I am a qualified accountant and a finance and investment professional. And of course, this isn't financial advice. Do your own research, talk to your professionals for you to execute anything. But in this video, I'm just sharing general knowledge or information which you might not be knowing that could be useful to you. Having said that, let's first of all start by having an understanding of how tax is computed out there before even you think about how to reduce tax. If it is an individual who is employed, it is a requirement for their employer to deduct tax of their salary before they pay them the net income. Basically, the government requires for the employer to tax your income through pay as you earn, typically abbreviated as payee, okay? And of course, tax amounts out there vary based on income level and other factors. I saw, by the way, there was someone who was confused, assuming that the higher your income, the more you're gonna be taxed. And even I had a friend at some point, he was worried that having an increase in income could actually result in him ending up paying more tax than he was paying before, even causing his net income to reduce. That is partly true, but to a larger extent, it is okay for you to earn more and more because data shows that in Kenya, very few people have breached the threshold of earning upwards of 800,000 Kenya shillings per month, and that's the level at which the government imposes a blanket rate on your income, which is 35%. Below that amount, we see a tax progression kind of whereby the tax is progressive based on tax bands. For example, a person earning 24,000 Kenya shilling is only going to be taxed 10% by the government, okay? And then from there, based on additional income, for example, the first 24,000 Kenya shillings, you're going to be taxed 10%. Then the next 8,333 shillings, you're going to be taxed 25% on that additional amount of 8,333 shillings. Then the next 467,667, that amount is going to attract 30% income tax on that particular tax bracket. So you see it is progressive, but then once it is the threshold of 800,000, all amounts and upwards of 800,000 Kenya shillings attract a blanket tax percentage of 35%. So guys, it is safe for you to increase your income because at the end, yes, you're gonna be taxed more and more based on the increase in income and which band is sitting, but at the end is gonna be additional money to your bank account. Having understood that, how exactly can you go about reducing the amount of taxes that you're paying to the government? Okay, as an individual, you have three possible ways through which you can reduce the taxes you are paying government. Assuming you are employed, there is an option for you to actually contribute to pension and then end up reducing the tax liability. And I'm saying so because look at it this way. The laws of Kenya allow for tax exemption for contribution to pension, but also to a given amount, which is basically 30,000 Kenya shillings per month. In case you have instructed your employer to contribute 30,000 Kenya shillings of your earned income to a given accredited pension scheme in the country, that amount will not be taxed. The reason being, it is a deductible expense before even tax is imposed on your income. So assuming, for example, you earn 70,000 Kenya shilling, okay? And then you have instructed your employer to contribute 30,000 to your retirement pension scheme. Guys, your effective income that's going to be taxed is 40,000 Kenya shillings. But then again, also the economic realities out there don't dictate for every person out there to say, contribute entire amount of my income to tax pensionable income to pension. And that's so because one thing to note is that this amount you're contributing to pension scheme, you're going to access it upon retirement. Of course, there's some caveat to it in Kenya, whereby, for example, in case you end your employment with your employer, for those accredited reasons, you can't be able to access a percentage of that particular contribution, typically 50% of the contribution for a specific tenure. But even with that, that is also taxable. It is only upon maturity, basically when you retire, that you're going to enjoy your pension contribution at no tax. So that tells you, also do the math of how many years do you have to retirement, okay? And then plan accordingly. But my belief is that we need to be capitalizing on that contribution. More so in case, for example, you have other side hustles, other kind of income streams which are bringing you money. Guys, look at maximizing that out. Of course, per month, it's up to 30,000 Kenya shillings. Per year is up to 360,000 Kenya shillings. That is tax-free and it's going to be removed from your income first before income tax is imposed on the remainder of income. Of course, also appreciating other reliefs availed to you by the government. Okay? And then the second way through which you can reduce your tax that you pay the government is by you understanding the person who's contributing. Look at it this way. If, for example, you are running a side hustle, which requires for example, to purchase different things, to incur different expenses, it will be quite dumb of you, for example, to say that is individual employment income, because you might also as well set up a company and then be earning that income from the company. And with that, you might be able to expense some of the things which make it feasible for you to run that particular business. To give you an example, I'm currently making this YouTube video for you, okay? The most ideal approach is to have a company through which all or any payments from this particular YouTube hustle go through. Whether it is payments directly from Google, whether it is payments from sponsorships, etc. Once those amounts of money hit my bank account for the company, then I have also the ability to expense some of the things which are key to ensuring my hustle continues. For example, purchasing of the cameras. For example, renting of spaces in which I do the shootings. For example, costs which have been incurred to get licenses to allow me to do maybe outdoor shootings, etc. All those guys are allowable business expenses. Of course, it is upon you to do consultation with a tax expert out there. This isn't financial advice. I'm just giving you tips on how to go about it or sharing ideas on those pockets you could look to explore. But always seek advice from a financial advisor, from your own desired accountant, for you to be able to know which expenses are allowable and which ones are not allowable when it comes to tax deduction, okay? But these are some of the ways through which you could be able to also reduce the tax burden. In case you have a limited liability company or even so an LLP in other countries, and you can be able to reduce your effective income tax, and as a result, the tax you're going to be paying to the government. And then the last option, the third option, which I'm also very sure where we stand as a country, our fiscal position is bound to surface more and more in the coming future, is possibly also reducing your tax through those non-taxable streams that are allowed by the government. Guys, our government is trained of income, is trained of tax, and even so, we just saw with the recent reading of the 2025-2026 budget, the government had a gap of 925 billion shillings. Of course, it's planning to borrow a major part of that amount from local borrowing and even have a few of Eurobonds, basically external borrowing too. Of that 925 billion tax gap, basically the fiscal gap that we're having. And with that, we might see actually incentives by governments out there which could even allow for example, those non-taxable streams as long as people are willing to contribute to different investments which government set up out there, and then government gets money which it much does require. So look out for such and be sure, in case those affected by the government out there, be sure to jump on those too, because in effect, it's going to reduce your taxable income through those untaxable streams which the government might avail. But then also understand those will actually call for you to either hold that particular investment to maturity, or even so just gain from, for example, interest or whatever the thing is behind the scenes. But that also is an avenue through which you might be able to effectively reduce the tax which you pay in the government. Is there any other way out there which you think an individual or even so a company could capitalize on for them to be able to reduce the tax that they're paying the government? Share your thoughts down below. If you're in Kenya or whichever country out there, are there additional venues? Share down below and let's continue discussing, guys. Cheers, and you all stay safe.